Hi, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on Discover Windows 10 Continuum. We're Be My App, and we're happy to have you all here. Sorry, there was some technical issues in the morning, but everything is ready and set up now. So for our very first speaker, I'm going to present to you Pradeep from Microsoft. He's going to be speaking on making your app Continuum and just making it really awesome. So without further ado, I'm going to give the man the screen. So Pradeep, you have the screen.
Thank you very much. So my name is Pradeep Parappil. I work in the Windows and Devices group. Specifically, I work for a team which is called the Developer Ecosystem and Platform, which is focused on the developer platform in Windows across all of the different devices, Windows Phone, Xbox, and we work with some of our top partners on new and upcoming features in Windows. So without taking too much time, let me quickly go through what I have today. So obviously, we have this feature called Continuum on phone, and what I really want to do today is to spend time on three things which are really important in terms of getting your apps ready for Continuum. So basically, from a developer perspective, there are a few things that you really need to take care if you're building apps which should scale well on for Continuum, right? One is, of course, there's the hardware piece, which I will not delve into because it's already being taken care of by HP through the various options through which you can project your screen. But what we'll really talk about today is the adaptive part of what you need to do in your application. I'll touch lightly upon the other pieces like packaging, testing, and scaling. But I really think that the thing which I want to talk about is about the piece around the adaptive app piece. So one of the most important things that you need to pay attention to if you are going to build applications which need to be scaled across a larger screen is to make sure that it's going to be projected on a larger screen, and second, the input modalities on those screens could be a mouse and a keyboard, right? It could be connected to a dock, and maybe if on a phone, mostly it's some kind of touch-based interaction, but on a larger screen with a dongle or a dock, there could be a keyboard or a mouse attached to it. So from a developer perspective, you need to be prepared for this. What do we really mean by adaptive apps? Right? I mean, when we say your app needs to be adaptive, what are we really talking about? So there are really three things that we really care about when we talk about adaptive apps. One is that the screen should be fluid. And what do we really mean by fluid here, right? So let me, I'm going to play this video again and again. So basically here you will see that when the window size is resized, the application basically automatically resizes the what is being presented on the screen. So here you will see, like, this is a looping video which is kind of showing you how when you expand the screen, the app kind of adjusts to this layout, and when you narrow it down, you kind of, so the UI is really fluid, and you could use things like, for example, wrap grid style controls to essentially reflow the content, right? So I mean, one way to achieve this kind of an effect is as you go from smaller screen to bigger screen is to use something like a wrap grid control. Let me give a more concrete example, right? In this case, for example, we have this. So just a quick time check. How many minutes do I have to on this topic, just so that I know when to stop and how fast or how slow I need to be?
Right now, you're perfectly fine. You can take up as much time as you like.
Okay. Cool. So basically, to give a more concrete example, right? This is an example where we can see three different UI elements are present. One is some kind of a photo image, and there are two controls, one of which, if you look at it, occupies about a third of the screen, and the other occupies about two-thirds of the screen. And this size is defined more in terms of the percentage occupied, percentage of the screen. So we have said this element takes one-third of the screen, this element takes two-thirds of the screen. So what really happens at this point is if you actually reduce the size of the screen, all of the content actually quite neatly adjusts itself within this smaller screen size. Text is still visible, and from a user perspective, things are still easily visible to the user. So basically, what you can do in this case is, so one is this fluid UI, right? And you can use responsive panels and things like that, relative panels and things like that to actually lay this out in a particular manner. The other thing is, one is of course being able to adjust based on a certain layout. The second thing is this ability to, just one second. The second thing is the ability for your application to respond to different types of UI changes, right? So just to give an example, um, let's say, so for from a Microsoft perspective, what we really say is that anything which is below 768 effective pixels, and if you are not fully aware of this concept of effective pixels, then you should really take some time to read about it, because it is not really the actual physical pixel on the screen, but it is a combination of the actual physical pixel on the screen plus the viewing distance. So that is what we use to compute what we call as effective pixels. So from a design perspective, anything which is less than 768 pixels ideally should have some form of phone optimized UI. And for anything which is above 768 effective pixels, you should try to respond to this particular type of a screen through a more desktop optimized or a big screen optimized UI. So just to give an example, right, one way for you to do something like this is to use adaptive triggers. So for example, here you will see that it is not just changing the if you look at what the difference from what we showed initially, where the fluid UI was just getting compressed, and the text was being shown in a particular, it was just reflowing. Here you will see that not only is the screen changing, but the change in the effective pixels is also triggering certain types of UI changes, right? So here you will see, for example, let me just replay this video again. Uh, okay. So here you will see in this case there's a new icon which came up in the phone layout, which kind of moved the like in this case you will see that when the size of the screen gets reduced, we use this adaptive trigger to reveal or hide content, right? And you can set different snap points at which these adaptive triggers come into play. If you look at the Windows UI design guide, it also has guidance on what are the effective pixel points at which you should set your snap points, which kind of covers a broad gamut of the different types of devices on which ultimately this content will be presented. So here again, you will see that in this particular case, we are using adaptive triggers to snap the UI flow, right? Sorry, the UI layout. In this case, you have two different, maybe some kind of a text control or a text, and basically what happens is when this kind of moves into a different layout, then essentially what happens is that you're not only responding to this change, but you're also repositioning some of the UI elements. So two things we talked about. One is fluid UI, and the second one is responsive UI, right? So here again is an example of the same thing what we saw earlier, where you have this layout of a photo plus two different elements where you have some kind of text, one occupying a third and the other occupying two-thirds of the screen. And in this case, what you will see is that unlike in the previous example, where you just kind of laid it out as a percentage, and the UI got I wouldn't say compressed, but it kind of the text reflowed in a way so that it occupied the same percentages on the screen. In this case, we have what we have really done is we have not only uh, uh, we have responded to this change in effective resolution by using some of the adaptive triggers to re-layout, reposition some of the UI elements. So basically what it really means is if you look at both of these cases is you're kind of preparing your application to be able to present itself on different effective pixel resolution. So it means that from a continuum perspective, when you project from a phone to a larger PC or from a phone to a larger screen, these layouts don't look very abnormal and they can adjust themselves to this newly presented screen. The third thing which we are really talking about is tailored UI. So in this example which you saw, the what was happening is that the UI was just being laid out differently, right? You were using the adaptive triggers, you were using the relative panels to basically kind of reposition some of the UI and to lay it out differently or to compress what was being presented on the screen. But if you want to go the whole hog, one of the other things which you can do is to present a completely different experience. So for example, in this particular case, which is kind of playing on my screen, you will see that not only on a larger screen, the UI elements are presented in a certain format, and when the effective pixel changes, then we use the adaptive trigger to not just to adjust what has been shown on the screen, but to present a completely different type of or a completely different set of UI controls and UI elements. So you could do the same thing. Basically, for example, if it, I mean, I think you must have seen some of these examples in some of Microsoft's own first-party applications as well, right? Things like Mail, etc. When you see it on phone, the layout and the elements look different, but when you project it onto a larger screen, it kind of behaves in a different manner. So things like navigation, things like layout, etc., can be re-architected by you based on adaptive triggers which come into effect based on any change in resolution. Um, I will skip right now the packaging piece, but effectively what we're really saying is that if you have a universal Windows app, it should really come with Continuum by default. Testing is also something which you need to be really aware and careful about, because if you think your apps are going to be used on a Continuum based device or a phone, it would make sense for you to kind of make sure that you test your application to make sure that the experience is something which is normal and usable on these different resolution and on these different external devices or external monitors. Um, uh, and the other thing which we really encourage our developers to do is that, okay, so the other thing which we really want our developers to do is to make sure that the assets which you have are available at different scales. So basically, you can already package it in your Apex and inform that which are the assets to be used at different resolutions, and Windows is capable of using those at different resolutions. Basically, the advantage of this is that you can avoid all of the issues related to downscaling, upscaling when the application is projected onto a screen. So, for example, the effective uh, resolution of many of the phones is very high. And if you were to provide assets for the phone, typically they tend to look good on a larger screen. But in some cases, if the resolution of these larger devices is lower, then there tends to be some issues around downscaling. So here again, I think what I would suggest strongly for you to go through is to look at some of the content around scaling. I will not delve into it in much detail because I was told I have much a limited amount of time to finish this. The last thing which I want to really leave you guys with is that having a phone and an external screen or an external projection surface really means that you can also create experiences which span multiple screens, right? So, for example, you could easily take advantage of both the phone as well as the big screen. So, these are, for example, if you look at it from TH1 onwards, we have made available several APIs which allow you to, for example, cast from within the phone to a large screen, right? So, if within the app you can identify which are the nearby devices and use the cast APIs to cast to those screens, or you could alternately use some of the projection manager APIs to create multi-view experiences. Right. In this case, for example, you have some kind of a slideshow similar to what PowerPoint has, where you have the notes as well as the PowerPoint slide notes on your phone, and you can project it onto a larger screen. And you could create applications very much like these using multi-view experiences. So this is all I had from my side from a continuum perspective. So
Perfect. Pradeep, thank you very much.